Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Book Break for Greece Public Library. I am Kirstra. I'm one of the librarians here. I moderate the Pints and Prose book discussion group, as well as the virtual science fiction and fantasy book discussion group. And I am joined, as always, by my intrepid colleague, Claire.
Hello, I'm Claire, and I moderate As the Page Turns book group and also our historical fiction group on Facebook.
Yes.
Amongst other things.
Indeed. And just a brief note to everyone watching today. As you may know, if you have been in the building lately, we have all kinds of construction going on. And there's not really anywhere in the building we can go to avoid it. So if you hear some construction noise in the background, we do apologize for that. But today, since school has just started and it's fall and it's that time, Claire and I thought we would talk about some books that we read in school that we really liked. So some of them are classics, some of them are, it's called modern classics, but they're all books that we first discovered, I think, in school. Claire, do you want to start?
Sure. All of mine came from this one class. I took a high school English, and it was an American literature focus. So I really kind of credit that class for part of my love of reading and kind of discovering some of the classics. And I wish I could remember my teacher's name to thank her, but I can barely remember my own name at this point.
Well, there you go.
All right. So my first one is William Faulkner, The Sound and the Fury. And this book kind of was groundbreaking for me because it made me realize that I could like or enjoy a book that most of my peers and classmates absolutely hated, you know. It was so different for me because it's a stream of consciousness book, and you really have to concentrate to pay attention to the way Faulkner writes. As everyone knows, I kind of love like that Southern Gothic, weird, quirky characters, and I credit dear Mr. Faulkner for starting me on that, you know, this journey that I have continued on through this day. This novel is one of his like standards. If you ever read, like, if you should read Faulkner, this one is often mentioned. It's a story of the three Compson brothers and their obsession with their sister Katie. Benji is severely handicapped, 33-year-old man. Quentin is a Harvard student, and Jason is a farm supply store worker. And then there's Faulkner's voice, and their Black Hook, who played a large part in raising the family. So Faulkner uses like a single moment in their lives to kind of forecast the decline of this once prominent Compson family and to examine the deterioration of the aristocratic class since the Civil War in the South. I'm actually trying to get my book club to read this book, but yeah, if they don't read it, and I'm not going to judge, I'm going to reread it again and see if it has the same effect on me. I think you remember that I read another Faulkner for our Classics Challenge?
Spring into the Classics.
Right, I did As I Lay Dying for that one. So, and kind of like that one too. That one was, you know, bizarre as well. So there you have it. Claire and her bizarre Southern taste. Thank you, William Faulkner, for starting me on that path.
So I have never read Faulkner, even though I took like American Lit classes in college. Like somehow Faulkner has always escaped me. Which one would you recommend starting with?
Probably this one.
Sound and the Fury.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
That was my first one, so I'm kind of prejudiced. And one day I really hope to go to Oxford, Mississippi and see his homestead and everything. I think there's a bookstore in the town. So I would love to do like a traveling literature tour.
Literary road trip.
So that would be one of my, literary road trip. You got it. You know me, I love my road trips anyway. So
nice. Very cool.
Come with me, Kirstra. Fall into the dark hole of Faulkner.
Yeah, I'll put it on the list. I will put it on the list for sure.
Are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I think we might have had some Wi-Fi glitch Hooray.
Yeah.
So I will start then with probably the book that's kind of closest to the Faulkner of the ones that I have. So I have Raymond Chandler, The Big Sleep. This is actually 3 Chandler books all in one, but The Big Sleep is the one I'm specifically recommending. So The Big Sleep introduces Chandler's probably most famous protagonist, who is Philip Marlowe. He is a private eye in LA in, let's see, I think these are set in like the late 40s, so post-war, but during that whole noir period. And I read that one first in high school, I think for AP English, and then again in college. And I ended up reading a bunch of Raymond Chandler after that. And I really like it. So if you like film noir, if you like that whole genre, this is a really good one. It's one of the first sort of hard-boiled detective noir private eye books that kind of touched off that whole genre and series. So Philip Marlowe, again, he's a private eye. He maybe drinks a little too much. He maybe does not have his life together. There are femmes fatales. There are murders. So he's, investigating a case, and there's red herrings, and there's, people trying to throw him off the scent and all kinds of stuff. So classic noir detective story. And if you like that one, and you like noir movies, so they have made at least a couple film adaptations of The Big Sleep. But then it also, it also got me on the track of like Chinatown with Jack Nicholson. And then you can follow that thread all the way through to, and now all names are gonna escape me. So I'm just gonna stop, because I'm gonna flounder for names and it's not gonna be fun. But you can follow that sort of noir detective thread all the way up to modern novels and cinema. So Big Sleep, Raymond Chandler, get your noir on.
Awesome. All right, my next one I'm going to jump into is John Knowles, A Separate Piece. And I just remember loving this book. So I kind of went back and was skimming it again last night. Oops, I lost an earphone in preparation for today. And to me, this is like the iconic boarding school book. I believe John Knowles went to, was it Andover? I know he went to a boarding school himself, so they say that the one in the book is loosely based on his own experience, but it's kind of like the dark side of adolescence. And the two main characters are Gene, who is kind of like not an outcast, but he's lonely, more introverted, very studious. And his roommate is Phineas, who they later, call Finney, who is handsome, athletic, not a care in the world. And what happens is there starts to become this almost unhealthy competition, and it's really more from Gene's viewpoint. And he wants to really beat Phineas at something. And eventually there's this moment of truth where they have this club at school. It's like during a summer session. This is also set like right before or during the beginning of World War II, which also affects them, thinking about what is going to be coming for them after graduation. So they're on a tree branch, and Gene intentionally jostles the tree branch, and Phineas falls and shatters his leg. So all his athletic prowess and everything is then taken away from him. The funny thing is he doesn't really remember what happened and doesn't blame Gene. But some of the other friends, eventually there's like a mock trial where they're trying to see what happened. So it's interesting. It's kind of like there's different characters in the book, but there is a reckoning of what happened. And then unfortunately, like after that trial, Phineas gets so angry he leaves the room, falls, breaks his leg again, and he ends up dying. So yeah,
Oh my
not to,
God.
not to, but there is like a, even though that's like a huge thing, it's really the coming around of Gene
Mhm.
and trying to resolve himself with what he did to Phineas. That's really the crux of the
Okay.
story in my
Huh.
mind. But yeah, definitely a classic. And it's so funny because some of the reviews are either really great or this is the most boring book I've ever read. Why did someone make me read this book? So, but I actually really liked it. So
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I haven't read that one either. I'm getting kind of Donna Tartt, The Secret History.
yeah, that's probably, I was thinking of what would be the most contemporary book that would kind of share this. But that one is intentional in The Secret History.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I don't think he meant to, I don't think he really even knew what he meant. He just, it was just an impulsive thing that he did.
Okay.
And it ends up changing his entire life.
Okay.
But,
Nice.
okay. Oh, and incidentally, another tie with my man Faulkner. This book won like the Faulkner Prize. I believe it was his debut novel. I'm not sure he ever wrote anything as well regarded again. But yeah, yes, a recipient of the William Faulkner Award. So
cool. Nice.
And this is, I believe, it could have a film adaptation.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, I am gonna do my sort of bummer book next. Not bummer. It's a really good book. So my next book is The Street by Anne Petrie. And this book blew me away when I read it. It's an excellent book. It is bleak. But it is, so it was published in 1946. The street of the title refers to 116th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues, which is a block in Harlem. And our main characters are Ludi Johnson and her son, Bub. So the book really is, it's a story of a mother like trying to do right by her kid. And the way that poverty and racism and sexism all just work to constrain every choice that Ludi has. So even though she's making the right choices in every circumstance, life just beats this woman down. Yeah. And like there's not a lot of up in the book. Like she makes a choice that she thinks is going to be the right choice, and then like more bad stuff happens. So it's kind of relentless in that way, but it really is a look at the way, you know, when your choices are constrained by those factors, like even good choices, like
Turn
don't
bad.
Yeah, and they don't give you really the opportunity to make the sort of personal progress that Ludi's really trying to make. So I don't want to give away too much of the plot. Like I said, it is an excellent book. It's super well written. It is heartbreaking and bleak, but it's really, really good. And I think still very relevant, sadly, to where we are today in a lot of ways. So the particulars may change, but a lot of those factors, you know, poverty, racism, sexism, are still at play, and still constraining choices in a lot of the same ways. But it's, yeah, just an excellent book, a look at, you know, a moment in American time and place that is really worth reading. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, my last one, everyone is going to be familiar with. And who doesn't remember this cover? Well, you know, younger people
Uh-huh.
may remember the one with Leonardo DiCaprio on it now.
Mm-hmm.
But F. Scott Fitzgerald, when I read this book, I almost became obsessed with him, you know, or obsessed with all his writings. Like I blasted through all his novels. I remember really liking the short stories, which I believe we still have some here. Like the Curious Life of Benjamin Button. Am I getting that right? It's like that was a short
Yeah.
story by Fitzgerald.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
But it really introduced me to symbolism in books. Like I remember all of us reading this book and like trying to figure out what the eyes, you know, on the billboard meant, and just all of the shirts with Daisy throwing them in the air, and just so many things. And then when I learned about he and Zelda, I kind of, you know, went down that rabbit hole too. And I've read a couple of fictionalized books about Zelda because, you know, they just fascinated me. It's like if you want to read about the 20s and a life of excess, then, you know, this book really leads you right down to that path. Of course, I've watched, you know, films of The Great Gatsby.
Sure.
Both Robert Redford and Leonardo DiCaprio. And so, you know, I think this is a classic that even though I've read it multiple times and I'll probably read it again, it certainly is short. It doesn't take that long, but I don't know. It's just something I turn to every now and then when I want to get into a classic, and I just want to see if I interpret it differently. So.
Yeah, I feel like it might be worth trying to read that one again because I did not love that book.
Yeah,
I've had to read it a couple of times for school. And I feel kind of the same way about Fitzgerald, the way I feel about Hemingway, which is I just want to smack everybody.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, I just want to smack everybody.
Yeah.
And tell them to maybe put down the bottle and dry out for a day, see where they're at.
Yeah.
But I also haven't picked that one up in probably 20 years. So maybe it's time. Maybe I would feel differently about it now.
It's funny you say that because I'm trying to get my book club to read a Hemingway. Because I was not a big Hemingway fan at all. But I just want to see if I feel the same way, try something different, you know.
Sure.
I think sometimes books affect you differently at different times in your life.
Certainly. Yeah, certainly. Nice. All right. My last book is The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. This is the winner of the 1997 Man Booker Prize. So for English literature, I think it's English, not just British, because she's Indian anyway. So, and this book is, I gather, I was, you know, reading through some Goodreads reviews, again, refreshing myself because it's been a while since I've read this one. And you either really like this book or you hated this book. Like it was 5 stars or 1 star on Goodreads. But the book is set in Kerala, India, which is like the southernmost state of the Indian subcontinent, mostly in 1969. That's when the main part of the action takes place. The main characters are Rahel and Esteban, who are twins, fraternal twins, and their mother, Amu. And the book is really the story of, you know, making choices, and it's kind of a look at the caste system and, again, those sort of rigid social structures and what happens when you try to break out of one of those and the way that society will just kind of snap you back. So the main part of the action happens when the twins' aunt and cousin come to visit from England, and, you know, there is a precipitating event, and then the fallout from that event, you watch how it sort of trickles through all of the relationships and the lives of all of the characters sort of from that point on. So there are sad parts of the book for sure. I feel that it's ultimately a very hopeful book and hopeful ending. but Roy does play a lot with language and metaphor. So it's one of those things where if you don't have patience for authors who play with their prose, you're probably not going to have the patience for this book. But if you can just sort of sink into it and, absorb the language, the way she sets it up, it really is a beautiful, beautiful read. I remember I had never read a book like it. And it really just floored me. And I know I wrote at least one paper on it. So I went back and reread it at least once, almost immediately. It's that kind of book. And you're going to pick up more stuff every time you read it. It's very layered and there's just a lot packed in there. But yeah, just a beautiful, beautiful book. The God of Small Things, set in a culture that I wasn't super familiar with either. So that's another interesting part of it. But yeah, highly, highly recommend.
I think that's one of the main benefits of having a book assigned to you is sometimes you feel like you have to sink into it. And then once you do, you're pleasantly surprised, like, oh, wow, and like you say, you discover you like a certain writing style or, it just, it's not a waste, people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things that I like about book clubs too, is that, every so often we read a book that I'm not excited about having to read, but then I read it and I'm like, I loved that book, or, it sets me off on a path to try other books or other authors, and it's never a waste of time.
No, I love being part of a book group just for that same reason.
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely. So join our book groups.
That's right. Talk about books.
Exactly. Well, I think that's all we have today. I hope you all are enjoying whatever books you're reading. Talk to us about the classics that you read in school that you loved, or even the classics that you didn't love very much that you still had to read. We'd love to hear about it.
Yes, we
and
would.
Yes. And we will be back in 2 weeks, and we will see you then.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Take care.